Things have gotten so out of control with Donald Trump's abuse of power and prosecutorial misconduct against a guy named Abrego Garcia that his lawyers are now asking a federal judge to grant and award their client amnesty to live in the United States because he got tortured by the United States by sending him illegally to El Salvador. That's how bad things have gotten for the Trump administration. Somebody now has to ask a federal judge to save them from the Trump administration seeking amnesty on his own domestic soil. We cover it all on Legal AF, the podcast, and here's a clip. Look at the depravity that's exhibited by the Trump administration and its leadership. They are bringing the entire weight of the federal government, the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, the bully pulpit of the presidency down on the slender shoulders of one person named Kilmar Abrego Garcia to pulverize him and make him disappear. And whether you believe or don't believe the allegations that have been lodged against him, and they're different if you're looking at the court filings from what Pam Bondi and other people are saying in public, whether you do or you don't, we all have to agree as Americans that he's entitled to due process. He's entitled to have a federal judge intervene. And if he's the target and the subject of a prosecutorial misconduct, abuse of power, vindictive prosecution, then there has to be a remedy for that. And we can't just reward the Trump administration for doing bad things. There has to be a federal judge using their inherent authority and using their equitable powers has to be able to right wrongs. And so let's bring the audience up to speed on Kilmar Abrego Garcia. We know from the weekend edition that he was ordered released from his federal detention on the criminal indictment that the Trump administration manufactured out of thin air for human smuggling in Tennessee. But after Judge Holmes, a magistrate judge, took a look at the indictment, like, is this what you got? And had witnesses testify in front of her. She I guess putting it nicely, a jaundiced view of the indictment and its strength, but also said that the grounds to keep him in jail are not present any longer. And she ordered him released, and he went home in the custody of his brother on Friday to go back to Baltimore, Maryland. And he had two orders that applied to him at that moment. Judge Holmes's order that you go home, custody of your brother, Monday morning, which was this Monday, 10 a.m., phone in to ICE and check in the Baltimore office. Judge Zinnes said, when you get out, you're under my jurisdiction, remanded to me, and you are to be given the same conditions of release you had before you went to El Salvador and were tortured by way of the Trump administration. None of that happened. You know Sean Hecker? Karen?
I know, yes.
Good. So we'll get to talk, because the original firm for Abrego Garcia is out. Talk about that later, which was Quinn Emanuel and others. And Sean Hecker and his partners are in. And boy, are they doing a great job. Why don't you catch the audience up about what happened, about the come in for an interview, won't you? And how Sean and his team were ready for that press conference, filing and all that.
Yeah. So look, he was released from federal custody in Tennessee because he's charged with a low-level federal human smuggling case. And so there was no reason to hold him in on bail. And he had to check in with ICE because he has this immigration proceeding going on, and he was going to check in, I think, by phone, and they asked him to come in, and everybody knew that was meant he was going to be detained, which of course he was, and his lawyers were ready with a lawsuit, and they brought the lawsuit in front of Judge Zinnes, who very quickly ruled that he can't go anywhere, and you're not going to, while we're going to litigate what's going on here, I'm going to get to the bottom of it, and I'm going to hold hearings in October, and he must not be removed from this country until then, because they were trying to extort a plea out of him. They were saying, hey, if you plead guilty to the Tennessee smuggling case, because I think they know that's kind of a BS case, and it's certainly not that serious, you could go to Costa Rica. You'll like Costa Rica better, because if not, if you don't take it, you are going to go to Uganda. I mean, that's essentially extortion, and it's very hard to get a judge to accept a plea like that under those circumstances, because pleas have to be knowing and voluntary. And during a plea allocution, when someone pleads guilty to a case, judges will ask a defendant, is anyone forcing you to do this? Is anyone threatening you to do this? Is anyone coercing you to do this? And he'd have to say yes to all of those. And the judge would not accept that plea. And so it's downright extortive. So they were going to, I think they want to do that to get rid of the case, because I think they know it's a BS case and they don't want to have to try that case, right? You would think they used to say it's easy to indict. A prosecutor can indict a ham sandwich, and it's easy to get an indictment, and it is very easy to get an indictment. But it's much harder to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt. And the reason I said it used to be is because also going on in Washington, D.C. is they keep trying to indict somebody for, I think it was throwing a sandwich at an ICE officer or FBI agent or somebody. And they're trying to indict that person for a federal crime. And they've presented it to 3 different grand juries, and all 3 times the grand jury rejected it. So, which I think is stunning, because Trump is trying to bring these low-level cases to Washington, D.C. And
this is the administration that let 1,600 people out for attacking the Capitol, trying to hang and assassinate elected officials. 5 people died, and somebody threw a sandwich.
Exactly.
And indicted.
Exactly. But that's why the jury system, the grand jury system, at the end of the day, people speak, and they don't like government overreach. And I love that 3 different grand juries rejected that. Anyway, but back to Kilmar Abrego Garcia. I'm sorry I went off on that tangent, but
I like that tangent.
but back to him. He essentially is being extorted because they don't want to prosecute that week old case that they didn't even arrest him at the time. It was a traffic stop, and they let him go. They were digging up something to try to do this to him. And so Judge Zinnes is not having it. And she's basically said, you're not taking him anywhere. We're going to get to the bottom of this and what's going on. And she even said to the Department of Justice prosecutor, Drew Ensign, do you understand? He must not go anywhere. She was like, I want to make sure you understand exactly what's going on. And they said yes. So we'll see. He's seeking asylum, and we'll see what ends up happening here. But the good thing is, at least there's some due process happening, which is exactly what the Constitution gives him and all of us a right to. And that's exactly what's being taken away from him. I just want to point out, though, also, Popok, how strange it is that we even know his name, right? There's about, I think, 65,000 federal prosecutions a year. That's not that many cases, but still 65,000. How many can you name? Not that many. You can name a couple, maybe a celebrity here or there, a couple of high profile cases. You can't name a guy who was charged with human smuggling in Tennessee from a traffic stop. So the fact that we even know about this and know the details, it just shows how unusual this case is and how ridiculous it is, right? This is something that is really not worth any of anyone's time. He should just be allowed to go on with his life. But he is not being treated as a human. He's being treated as a political pawn, and it's really atrocious. But I'm happy to see that judges, and this judge in particular, Judge Zinnes, is insisting on upholding the rule of law.
So he's here until October. That's when the evidentiary hearing is going to be. I never heard a federal judge in my life, I've been doing this 35 years, who had to say out loud, you are absolutely forbidden to remove him from the country while I have jurisdiction and I'm considering the writ of habeas corpus. I mean, this is how low the Department of Justice has sunk in the eyes of the federal judiciary. And I don't want to gloss over the amnesty thing. That's a big thing. The reason I say that is normally somebody seeks asylum. I said amnesty. Somebody seeks asylum in this country because they're being tortured if they return to their country, or they're going to be politically persecuted or otherwise persecuted, and they prove that to an administrative law judge / immigration judge. Think about what we're arguing, what effectively the lawyers for Abrego Garcia, including Sean Hecker, who you and I both know, are arguing. They're arguing that they're going to be arguing for a political asylum, in front of Judge Zinnes. And they're going to argue that the Trump administration has unclean hands, that they have committed prosecutorial misconduct in that trade that you talked about. Would you like to go to Fantasy Island or Uganda? I mean, what is this? Let's make a deal. And so to punish vindictive prosecution, selective prosecution, prosecutorial misconduct, which she already said, she already scrunched up her nose when that was described to her. Won't you plead guilty to the indictment that you have up for motion to dismiss for vindictive prosecution that Judge Crenshaw is dealing with and solve that problem for us? No. Okay, you're going to Uganda. And she didn't like that. So if at the end she says, look, if I were Judge Crenshaw looking at an indictment for prosecutorial misconduct, I would dismiss the indictment and not allow it to be reindicted as a punishment to the government for breaking the law effectively and righting that wrong. But that's not what I have in front of me. What I have in front of me is a series of civil liberties and due process violations that I have to figure out a way to redress, and unclean hands by, this is me doing my rendering of Judge Zinnes.
This is Judge Popok?
This is Judge Popok, but this is Judge Zinnes, this is the one who got upheld 9-0 by the Supreme Court, whose orders have been ignored. I mean, there's a whole rule in Maryland we're going to talk about later in federal district courts in Maryland, which is referred to as the Abrego Garcia rule, named after him, which require that nobody gets sent to El Salvador or anywhere else after a writ of habeas corpus has been filed for 48 hours. And so that's what we're going to be, those worlds collide in a later segment for us. But this particular Judge Zinnes, who got taunted by the Trump administration about Abrego Garcia and has been told by the Supreme Court, you protect his civil liberties in your courtroom the best way that you can, and you're doing fine, which is, my version of the April or May April decision by the United States Supreme Court. She says, I got this all in front of me, this body of work of you, the Department of Justice. And how do I right this wrong? I'm going to grant asylum in the United States, again, in the country that he believes the government of has tortured him. That's where we are in this upside down world right now.
Yeah, it is an upside down world. It makes you wonder, right? Things must be really bad if he wants to stay here, given how he's been treated. Yeah.
With his family. I mean, he's got his family here. If I were him, I'd go to Costa Rica.
I know. That's what I was thinking.
But that's me. Me. And, he's courageous and he's fighting. And the more I heard him talk, it was in Spanish in translation, the more I was like, this is like a Rosa Parks moment. I mean, this guy just standing up. He didn't take the path of least resistance to go to Costa Rica and take that deal. And it's not his lawyers holding him up. But look, these are important matters. Like I said, he's the poster child for the depravity of the Trump administration, and he's fighting back. And the Trump administration is on full display. And the more they fight back, the more it provides evidence for Judge Crenshaw to dismiss the indictment, and hopefully for Judge Zinnes to grant him asylum as a punishment to this Department of Justice. I mean, look. You're a lifetime prosecutor before you became a private lawyer, private practice. Have you ever, and you've worked closely with some of your counterparts in the federal prosecutor's office, you ever seen anything like this? A person subjected to this much prosecutorial misconduct?
I've never seen anything like it. I mean, this is just unbelievable. They are pulling out every stop, rather than saying, don't forget when he got sent to El Salvador the first time. They admitted it was a mistake. They made a mistake. This administration, rather than saying, oops, I made a mistake, they have to win at all costs. And that is what this is about. They have to win at all costs, assert their might and their authority to send a message to everyone, do not defy this presidency, or we will come after you. We will use any tool we have in our toolbox. And I have never seen such a vindictive, and I use the word prosecution. This is not more than just a prosecution. Whether it's deportation, whether it's the prosecution, they are just looking for any lever they can pull against him so that they can win. And I've never seen anything like it. And I think that is what could be a basis for dismissal and for granting relief. I was thinking a lot about the Uganda versus Costa Rica extortion, but frankly, prosecutors extort pleas out of defendants every day in this country. Every time you say, I'll offer you a lesser sentence if you want to plead guilty now. If you go to trial, you'll get more, right? And so what do? They take that. Or they say, I will trade you life in prison instead of the death penalty. And that has been ruled to be okay. And that is not considered extortion, that somebody takes life instead of death, right? So I don't know that this Supreme Court is going to view this any differently if it gets to that point. But I think there are plenty of other grounds that the judge can rule that this is selective and vindictive prosecution. And really, I mean, I've just never seen anything like it. We're not talking about someone accused of a serious crime. We're talking about someone who's accused of transporting people voluntarily.
Welcome back. We sit at the intersection of law and politics every day, every hour, but certainly twice a week in a podcast we pulled together, and we call it Legal AF. It's about an hour-long podcast. We curate the top stories that you need to know at that intersection of law and politics. You can watch it on the Midas Touch Network. You can watch it commercial-free on Legal AF Substack. In addition to all of that, you can also find us on audio podcast platforms. So if you want to support Legal AF, the podcast, and the reason that we are at the top of the charts is all because of you, and we're honored by it. So take a moment. If you don't know about us already, join us on Wednesday and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Midas Touch Network. Watch our commercial-free versions on Legal AF Substack, where you can subscribe as well, and download the audio and leave a review as well. So until my next report, oh, by the way, you're on Legal AF YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button as well. So until our next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.